Picture this. You're in the middle of a heated argument. Your heart's racing, your jaw's tight, and the other person is staring at you, waiting. So you do what you've been taught to do your whole life. You say, "Fine, I'm sorry. Can we just move on now?" And somehow, everything gets worse. Here's what nobody tells you about apologies. Most people have been doing them completely wrong their entire lives. And mature people, they've figured out something the rest of us are still fumbling with in our 30s, 40s, even 50s. Today, I'm going to show you the exact difference between how most people end arguments and how emotionally mature people do it. And I promise you, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah apologizes constantly to her boss when he assigns her extra work at 5 p.m., to her partner when he forgets to text her back, to her friends when they cancel plans last minute. Sarah thinks she's being the bigger person. She thinks she's keeping the peace. But here's what's actually happening. Sarah's relationships aren't getting stronger, they're eroding. Because Sarah learned the wrong lesson about conflict. She learned that apologizing ends arguments. And technically, she's right. But so does walking away from a fire without putting it out. John Gottman spent decades studying couples, watching them fight, watching them make up, watching some marriages thrive while others crumbled. And he discovered something fascinating. The couples who stayed together didn't fight less. They weren't more compatible. They weren't even nicer to each other during arguments. They just knew how to repair. That word matters. Repair. Not end, not avoid, not smooth over. Repair. How most people apologize. Let's get real about what most apologies actually sound like. Sorry if you felt that way. Notice the word if? That's not an apology. That's a dismissal wrapped in polite words. You're not acknowledging what happened. You're questioning whether the other person has a right to feel hurt at all. Or how about this one? I already said I'm sorry. What more do you want from me? Now the apology has become a weapon. You're not rebuilding trust. You're keeping score. You checked the box. You said the magic words. Why isn't everything fixed? Or my personal favorite, fine, I apologize. Happy now? Congratulations, you just turned an apology into an attack. Here's what all these have in common. They're transactional. They're about ending your discomfort, not addressing theirs. You're throwing words at the problem like spare change at a beggar, hoping they'll just go away. And here's the brutal truth that researchers have confirmed. These hollow apologies make things worse. They don't reduce anger, they increase resentment. Because now the other person feels hurt and dismissed. You've essentially told them their pain isn't real enough to deserve your genuine attention. If you do this enough times, something shifts. People stop expecting anything real from you. They stop bringing up issues, not because things are better, but because they've given up on you actually caring. Now let me show you what changes when someone actually understands what an apology is for. Imagine the same scenario. You snapped at someone you care about, you were stressed, overwhelmed, and you took it on them. Here's what a mature person says. I'm sorry I snapped at you earlier. I can see that hurt you, and I genuinely regret that. I was dealing with a lot of stress, but that's not an excuse for how I treated you. I'm going to work on managing that better. What would help right now? Feel the difference? First, they name the specific thing they did wrong, not vague, not sorry for whatever. They said exactly what happened. Second, they acknowledged the impact. They saw the hurt they caused and named it out loud. That matters more than most people realize. When you acknowledge someone's pain, you're telling them their reality is valid. Third, they take full responsibility. No but, no if, no however. Yes, they mention the stress, but immediately label it as not an excuse. They're giving context without deflecting blame. Fourth, they commit to change, not just feelings, action, actual different behavior. And fifth, they ask what the other person needs. They're opening a door instead of slamming it shut. Harvard researchers who study negotiation and conflict have identified these exact 5 elements as what makes apologies actually work. And psychological studies back this up.
When people receive apologies structured this way, their anger drops, their desire for retaliation decreases. The relationship can actually move forward. This isn't therapy speak. This is how you save relationships that matter. The boundary-preserving apology. But here's where it gets interesting. What if you genuinely didn't do what someone's accusing you of? What if they're upset, but you're not actually at fault? Most people swing to one extreme or the other. Either they cave completely, fine, it's all my fault, I'm terrible, I'm sorry to exist, or they go full defense mode. That's not what happened, you're remembering it wrong, you're being ridiculous. Mature people have figured out a third option. I hear that you're upset and I want to understand what happened. I'm not comfortable taking responsibility for something I don't think I did, but I am open to hearing how this felt from your side and working towards a solution together. This is what Marshall Rosenberg's research on nonviolent communication teaches. You can validate someone's feelings without accepting false blame. You can hold your boundary while staying in the conversation. You're not saying you're wrong. You're saying, I see you're in pain and I want to help, but I need us to be honest about what actually happened. That's strength. That's maturity. That's how you protect yourself without burning the relationship down. When not to apologize. Here's what nobody wants to hear. Sometimes apologizing is the worst thing you can do. If you're constantly apologizing to the same person for the same patterns, you're not resolving conflict. You're participating in a dysfunction loop. You've become the person who apologizes so they don't have to change. If someone is gaslighting you, demanding apologies for their behavior, making you responsible for their emotions, stop. That's not conflict resolution. That's control. Ask yourself, when I apologize to this person, do things actually get better, or do I just get a temporary break from their anger? Because apology without accountability is just enabling with better PR. The choice. So, here's what it comes down to. Most people apologize to make discomfort stop. Mature people apologize to make relationships stronger. Most people say sorry and hope it goes away. Mature people say sorry and follow it with change. Most people treat apologies like magic words. Mature people treat them like the beginning of repair. So the question isn't whether you apologize, it's whether your apologies mean anything. So which version have you been living? Drop a comment. Relationship scenario or workplace scenario? Tell me your toughest situation and I'll rewrite it with a script that actually works. Because you deserve relationships where conflict makes you stronger, not relationships where you're just managing the next explosion.